Jesus Freak here. Now, when I started making videos, I wasn't really trying to attract the usual kind of people who, would be interested in this kind of video, so much as, I was aiming for the left. I was aiming for people who were more like myself, but who weren't necessarily believers, or people who, were raging against the heavens because they identified Christianity with those insufferable jerks who are your typical Christians. And it was my way of saying, look, I'm one of you. I ain't like them. I just happen to be a believer. And then I got mixed in with Pastor Brett and things happened. But, everything has its reasons. It was the way it was meant to be. Now, I admit, I ain't exactly your typical Christian. And I never really was. I always had my own ways of understanding things. I was that weirdo who grew up, most of you people are probably, Baptist and non-denominational, and I grew up United Methodist. I grew up on the New Revised Standard version and the Old Revised Standard before that came out. So, I came into this thing from a completely different direction. And yeah, it kind of feels weird that I've just, I've sucked up the same audience as Pastor Brett. But, it was another YouTuber who eventually led to me adopting the current handle I use, I called myself your favorite redheaded freak. I've got some hang-ups about my appearance. I was always mercilessly mocked for my hair. It's not as bright as it used to be. They used to call me Duracell. I looked it. My hair was bright red when I was a kid. It's faded. I'm 40. It ain't as bright as it used to be. But I grew up with one perspective. I grew up in a sort of schizophrenic situation. The United Methodist Church doesn't know whether it wants to be conservative or liberal. And that's what's tearing it apart. They don't know what they want to be. And as they say, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And that's what's happened. And maybe I'm a bit of a traditional Methodist. And if you look at that sort of traditional Methodist, it's somewhere between Baptist and Episcopal. But they're leaning more nowadays toward Episcopal. They're leaning more towards the Church of England and the Church of Rome. Because the Church of England is leaning into the Church of Rome. And and I'm like, I keep finding, things aren't the way they were when I was a kid. It's like people stopped caring about what matters. And I wanted to make my stand for what I felt mattered. But it's not the same approach. I've always considered myself a Christian, first and foremost. What makes someone a Christian? They accept and believe in the Bible. The Bible's their authority. Because how else are you going to believe in Christ? Paul said, oh, faith comes by hearing. How will they believe if they haven't heard? And I was taking the same approach as anyone. The only difference was I'm coming at it from a more liberal perspective than most people are. But it's not as different as it would seem. You compare me with Pastor Brett, it's probably a fair comparison. There's some things we don't agree on. You look at the bulk of things, you go down to the nitty gritty, and, we do have the same beliefs. When it comes down to, you know, what's our authority? Who do we worship? Stuff like that. We're absolutely on the same page. But I didn't choose so much to be your friendly neighborhood Jesus freak. It chose me. I would have been happy to just sit around making videos of me playing old video games and tinkering around with 20-year-old computers. But everything happens for a reason. I'm not going to say like some people do, everything's literally controlled by God. We're just marionettes. That makes God the author of villainy. That's borderline dystheism, which is the belief that God is evil. But God's definitely out there directing things, steering us, guiding us. And I have to say, he's definitely steered me into a certain direction, which I wouldn't have gone into on my own. Because it ain't me. But I am what I've become. And, by the grace of God, I'll finish whatever mission He's set out for me. If I figure out what that is. I know I'm here to win souls. That's what we're all here for. Beyond that, I haven't the slightest. But I'll find out in due time. Jesus freak out.